Well, good evening. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Wednesday night is our interview night. Who have we talked to? We've talked to some medics who are at Knighton. We've talked to the band leaders at Knighton. We had a good time last week with them. And next week, we're going to talk to Mark Gibson from SIM. He's going to talk to us a little bit about Burkina Faso. We're going to do a live stream. It's going to be a tad different, and there's a mystery guest, so that'll be exciting. But this week, it's lovely to have Dettie Wallington with us, and really grateful that she's joining us. Dettie, thank you so much for being here. You're from the Exaireo Trust in Loughborough. We're going to learn all about that tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing about that. But I thought we'd start first of all with finding out a bit more about Dettie. So you've got a link with Knighton, not the church, but the place. Tell us about that. And can you tell us as well how you came to be a follower of Jesus Christ?
Yes. So I was actually born in Knighton, and I grew up in Knighton and lived in Knighton till I was 20 when I got married. So my parents, they lived all their married life in Knighton as well. So, and then I was brought up in a Catholic home. We went to, many of you will know, St Thomas More's Catholic Church was our parish church. But my mum and dad definitely were always believers, and so right from all my life, I was very aware of Jesus, and I always regarded Jesus as my friend, and I used to chat to him all the time. It wasn't really till then, as I became a teenager and got married and had a child, I stopped going to church. And I suppose I never gave up believing, but I sort of just stopped going to church and getting involved. And it was really when I was about 28, we moved house to Woodhouse Eaves, and the very first person I met was a Christian, and she invited me to church. So I went along. It was the Methodist church in the village, and I got to know some lovely people, and they used to really challenge me about whether I was a Christian or not. So I was really worried in case I wasn't. So just in case, I decided to ask Jesus into my life and said the prayer. I expected thunderbolts and everything, but there wasn't. But yeah, so actually before that, when I was 11, I was confirmed. I'd forgotten that, and I didn't really understand what it meant, but somebody said it meant that you were in God's army and fought the devil. So I do remember when I was 11 kneeling down and saying to God, I want to be in your army and I want to fight the devil. So I feel God's always had his hand on me.
Fantastic. Now look, you work with some of the more vulnerable people in society, with those who haven't got a home, with those who are struggling with various addictions and so on. And I'd love to know how this work began. We were talking earlier, actually, and you said that your parents set up shelter here in Leicester. So actually, you've been working with these folks since you're about 7. So yeah. Tell us a bit about that, and tell us how this all started.
So I don't know if any of you remember the film Kathy Come Home, which was about a lady who was living in quite I think a very much a slum. And I remember it really spoke to my mum and made my mum think she really wanted to make a difference and do something about it. So when I was 7, my mum and dad actually started the local shelter group. And initially it was fundraising, but out of that grew what's now the Sharp office on Welford Road. I used to clean that to earn pocket money when I was a teenager. And a lot of the projects in Leicester started as a result of my parents starting the shelter group. So at the age of 10, our phone number was the emergency number for many, many years. So if somebody found themselves homeless, they would ring our home number, and my dad would advise them on what to do. So when they used to go out and we had a babysitter, I remember being 10, homeless people, this rat would ring and there was a big list on the wall of what to advise them. So I used to give advice at 10 to people who were ringing up. So yeah.
Very good. So you move up to Woodhouse Eaves. where does how do you start getting involved with the homeless and so on
Okay.
there?
So I was a nurse. That was always what I loved being a nurse, and my intention was always to go back. But God obviously had a different plan. While I was pregnant with my 5th child, and I went through a very awful marriage breakup. I went through domestic violence, and my husband was having an affair with somebody else in the church. And while I was pregnant, and for 2 years, I went through an absolute horrific time. So I have to say, it was in that time, I was already a Christian, but it was in that time that I really came to know that God really, really loved me, and that He was there for me. I was suicidal at times. I remember one day I was 8 months pregnant, and I really believed that my children would be better off without me. It's such a lie of the enemy. And I got in the car to actually go and kill myself, but God intervened and stopped me, and that was a turnaround for me. So I remember I had some really good Christian friends who used to pray for me every day. And I remember being up all night, just pacing from the emotional pain, and not wanting to ring anybody till 7. It didn't seem fair. And I just remember saying to God, Lord, I don't ever want anybody to go through this awful pain and not be able to ring me or speak to me, and to be able. So I sort of, I felt that was quite, looking back, that was quite a significant prayer. Anyway, my marriage broke up, and I became a single parent, etc. God was amazing. And then I just felt very challenged by the scripture, Mark 16, the Great Commission, about going to the world and preach the gospel. And I remember I had a friend who was a musician, and I used to go into the pubs with him and support him. And I remember just watching people's faces that would come into the pub. You could see the pain etched on them. And and I'd watch them drink, and as they drank alcohol for a time, that pain seemed to go, just temporary. And I just knew again that actually most of these people would never come to church. It's too uncomfortable. That we needed to go out to where they are. So again, I just knew God was stirring me for something, but I didn't know what. And so I just kept praying, saying, Lord, what is it you want me to do? Excuse me.
Right.
And then one night, this might sound a bit weird, but I was just praying again, saying, God, what do you want me to do? And He said to me in an audible voice, I want you to start a soup run, which I've never heard of, and no idea what a soup run was. I want you to, and He gave me all the details, what night to go out, where to go, etc. So that's how it began about 25 years ago now. Just myself and a group of friends, very naively, I have to say, just went out on the streets of Loughborough taking sandwiches, soup, chocolate to people sleeping on the streets.
Wow.
So that really, I have to tell you, God really uses the foolish things, because I was a single mum on benefits, so I struggled to feed my own family. I was terrified of the dark. I had a really unnatural fear of being murdered. I wouldn't go out of the village even in my car at night in the dark. And then when God asked me to do the soup run, I went with a friend to Nottingham he led a soup run in Nottingham. And I remember going in, we got to this squat, and before we went in, he said, we need to pray before we go in, because there's somebody quite dangerous in there. So we need to check with God before we go in. And I remember thinking, Lord, my prayer was, Lord, please don't let us go in. Please don't let us go in. But we did go in, and there was such a presence of God in that place. And I remember driving home, and I said to God, right, God, I'm willing to do the soup run, but He needs to lead it, not me. So I think the best plan to do is we'll ask Him if He'll lead, and I'll just help. But God said to me, no, you're to do it. And overnight, without any prayer, I woke up one morning and I was completely set free from my fear of dark and my fear of being murdered.
Wow, that's amazing, Dettie. So,
Yeah.
It's often like that, though, isn't it? That you know, God likes to use the weak in His work. But also, I think what is remarkable is you're not coming at it from a position of kind of a Christian do-gooder. You're coming at it from an equal level, aren't you? You were in need. You were a
Yeah,
single mum. You didn't have all the answers.
yeah,
That's very encouraging to hear. So you start up this soup run.
yes.
How does that develop then?
So we did that for 7 years, and again, I very quickly at that time in Loughborough, if somebody became homeless, there was nowhere for them to go. There was not any drop-ins. Unless you had a good friend or money, it was the streets. And I also quickly saw, and this is my own opinion and my experience, that if you didn't get somebody off the streets within 2 weeks, it seems to break their spirit. And it makes it very difficult for them ever to get themselves back on their feet again. So for 7 years, I kept trying to set up a day centre. It's like I knew God was saying, there's more, there's more. And so pushed lots of doors and the doors kept just closing. I saw a lot of people die. A lot of people got saved and then the next week they'd be dead. So much so I've started to think I'm not going to tell anybody else about Jesus because they just die. But obviously they would have died anyway, but at least, I know they're in heaven. So that was hard, just really crying out to God saying, Lord, what is it? What do we do? So that for 7 years, I'm looking back now, I can see that was my training ground.
Are you on your own at this point?
Yes.
Have you got
yes.
Other people are helping you?
Oh, sorry. Yes, there was 4 of us that used to do the soup run, but it was. I do have to say, and this isn't a criticism to anybody at all, but they were lovely, but people had their own thing, and I feel that's been part of my particular journey. Was there's times when I've had to rely totally on God. There's not been anybody else, people have been lovely, but there's been times when I've had to carry something that other people perhaps didn't quite get. They'd got their own things, their own, So there was times it did feel very lonely. And I can't take any credit for it. This just shows God, because I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
That wasn't me. It wasn't my faith or anything. It was totally God. I just couldn't put it down. When you're pregnant, the baby's going to come out somehow. There's nothing you can't suddenly say, I've changed my mind, I don't want to be pregnant, and it was like that. I couldn't put it down. And then I had a phone call out of the blue one day from a lady who'd heard about me, and I shared my vision with her, and she knew a Christian charity who didn't have any money, but they were about helping. They were based on Ephesians 4:20, about helping people with visions to do them. So I met with them and shared my dream, and they introduced me to some people that they knew around the country who had set up similar projects in other places, and they put us together, and I was commissioned to find a building. So we found, it wasn't as simple as this, but we found a building, we made an offer. We didn't even have £5, we had no money, but we knew it was God. So we made an offer, and within 2 days we'd had an anonymous donation of just under £500,000, which enabled us to buy the building and to do all the work. And so we set up a hostel that actually, it's Carpenter's Arms, which you may have heard of. It's not a hostel anymore, it's a rehab. So we ran that for 5 years, and then there was a bit of politics with the trustees, so it closed. But myself and my 2 colleagues really believed that God wanted the work to continue. So we set up a charity. Again, we didn't have any money. Somebody else I think you needed £100, and somebody else put that up for us. When we ran the hostel, I'd sent an email out to churches asking if there was any landlords with a social concern heart who would be interested in renting us a house, which we'd use as a move-on house. So I approached the landlord there and explained what had happened and said, look, could we still keep the house? And not only did he say, yes, he said that when we were ready, he'd buy us another one. So again, God, God is so amazing. But no money, but God just provides and does it. So the Exaireo Trust was set up 12 years ago, and I often laugh because my two colleagues' families moved in together and to cut their costs. So my office was actually an attic stair. So the attic, the actual landing was one of their desks, and I just used to sit on the top step. And so we'd make all these phone calls to all these agencies, very professional. And I used to giggle to myself because I'm just sat on this stair, So yeah, so that's how Exaireo started, and we've just seen God's provision, His blessing, and I know it's His project.
Dettie, thank you. Look, if you want to ask Dettie a question, feel free to join in here. You can put something in the comments, and I'll ask her anything, or you can tell her something. That'd be great. Dettie, I want to move on in a moment just to ask, because the Exaireo Trust is much more than just a housing project. There's lots of different areas to it. I want to just ask a question first of all. In normal days, imagine I'm walking through Leicester a Saturday afternoon, and I go through a bit of a kind of a sheltered place, and there's a guy lying there in a heap of rags, and he goes, "Spare some change, mate." What do I do? What do I do?
I would always say one of the things that people on the streets feel is incredibly lonely. They feel scum, especially if they're drugs. They call themselves as crackheads, whatever. And so sometimes it's just smile and acknowledge them. And even if you say, "I'm really sorry, I can't," but the fact that you've acknowledged them and you smiled goes a long way, because you're acknowledging that they're a human being. I would say rather than give money, it's probably best to offer, say, can I get you a hot drink or something to eat? There is the odd occasion that if you feel to give them money, then do. Okay, there's a good chance they're going to use it elsewhere, but sometimes I think just that act of kindness, I believe that we carry the kingdom of heaven with us, and just an act of kindness, I think the Holy Spirit, we don't know what God can do with that. So there are times, though generally speaking, I'd say not to give money, to smile or offer them and to get them a drink or something to eat. But if you do feel actually I'm going to give some money, then I think that's okay sometimes. I wouldn't feel guilty about it. I wouldn't encourage it. But the odd time, sometimes it's felt that is the right thing to do. And for me, that's just showing kindness and love to that person.
Yeah. I got a call from somebody in the church last week, Victoria Park, saying, "Andy, I'm with a guy, homeless, hasn't got anything to eat. Can you find out about the food banks?" So I found out food banks, they weren't open right then. So this person went to the local supermarket and just bought them some food.
Yeah.
Helped them on their way a bit, which was lovely.
Yeah.
So just come back to, when did the Exaireo Trust become the Exaireo Trust? And by the way, where'd you get that name from?
Okay, so it's New Testament Greek for restoration.
I should have known that, shouldn't I?
Well, I didn't.
I don't know any Greek.
Took me ages to learn how to spell it. So we tried so many different names, and we just couldn't. Everything that we came up with had already been taken, with the Charity Commission. So it was actually one of our trustees' wives I'd never heard of it, who came up with it, and we just really liked the fact. Two things, and we loved what it meant, which was restoration, or to rescue, to pluck out, which we felt really says what we do. And also it's great because all the agencies that we work with, we're very upfront saying we're a Christian charity, but often they say, "Well, what does it mean?" So it's a lovely way of saying, well, it's from the Bible. It means this.
Lovely. And so what is the Exaireo Trust? What are the different projects you've got on going?
So we have 12 houses. So we provide temporary supported accommodation to people that are homeless, single people. That means they can stay for up to 2 years, and they have a room in a shared house. They have their own bedroom, but they'll share a kitchen and lounge, maybe with 2 or 3 other people. They'll have a support worker, and our aim is very much about helping them to move on to live independently and back in some kind of education or work or training. So for that part of the project, we've got 36 residents in that part. Actually, no, sorry, we've got 39 residents anyway. And then we do take people that have drug and alcohol issues. Not all of them do, and mental health, but they've got to be wanting to change. So it's not a place people can just come and just carry on. They've got to want to change. So we do. So if they've got drug and alcohol issues, one of the conditions is they have to attend what we call our Road to Recovery course, which is just once a week really, where it's run by somebody that was in addiction for many years. He's been clean now for about 10 years. So there's some support there around their addiction. They have to do 2 days of worthwhile activity, which we feel is really important for a person's well-being, their mental well-being. So I'll come back to that in a minute. And then because we work so much with people caught up in addiction, we just really felt that a lot of people need a lot more. You know, they're in a house, but there's a little bit that we can do, but it's not enough. So we set up Inspiration House, it's called. We didn't call it that actually. It's the only house that we've actually bought. All the others are rented. But when we bought it, we discovered that its name is Inspiration House, which we felt was really, a real God thing. And again, the story behind that, if I may just share, that's a testimony. We found the house. It felt the right house. We could get a mortgage, but we needed 50 grand deposit, which we hadn't got. But again, we believed this was, the house. And that same day, this Christian businessman just knocked on our door and said, I've got some money to invest. I don't know if you can use it. It's 50 grand. So we were able to buy the house.
Amazing.
So that's from 5 men, and it's a rehabilitation. So they live there, and there's a member of staff that lives there, and we try and run it like a family. But it's part of a structured day rehabilitation program. So there's a lot of therapeutic. We're very clear that everything we use is biblical. The guys don't have to be a Christian at all to come in, but we explain, that we don't believe anybody would argue that the Bible is full of a lot of wisdom. So the stuff that we use is very biblical. They do have to go to church, but it's a church of their own choice, as long as it's a Bible-believing church. And we do Bible studies every morning. And actually, it's developed, I'd say, into a lot more like a discipleship house. So everybody that's come into the house has got saved. And not just saved, but putting down really strong roots in God, which has been lovely to see. But one of our lads actually went to Bible college. He's just finishing in June last year. So there's a lot. We do a lot of therapeutic work and prayer and Bible study around addiction, getting to the real roots. Addiction, in my opinion, it's a fruit of deep rooted stuff, and that's so.
I want to just pause you there, because I want to come back to that and talk to you a bit more about addiction in a minute. So you've set up these houses, you've got a kind of a factory shop and so on.
Yes.
Working on counselling, Bible studies. Did I hear some of you work in prison as well? Prisons?
We don't know. We're not at the moment. We interview people and we've got a good relationship, but no, we're not able to go in there.
Dettie, what about links with churches in Loughborough? Because you're very clear this is a Christian organization. You use a New Testament Greek word for your title. What are the relationship with the churches? How does that work?
We're very blessed in Loughborough. There's a lovely relationship between the churches in Loughborough. One of the things that God showed me really clearly right at the start was this is I don't say this for everybody, this is just for us. that it wasn't to be under any particular church. It needed to be a group of Christians from different churches. So all our staff they have to be a Christian to work for us, and we all go to different churches in the town. So we get a lot of support from all the churches, which is really special, actually.
So look, I rudely interrupted you when you were starting
Okay.
to talk about addiction, but it really interests me. So, you know, there may be some people, by the way, Becky Panting thinks this interview is the most inspiring, encouraging thing I've seen in ages. So keep going, Betty, you're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah, there may be some people who are actually watching this who themselves have an addiction. It's maybe something they feel on top of and the world can't see, but they know they have it. Or they may well have a friend, a colleague, family member who also has an addiction. And it is so hard, isn't it? It's so hard. How do you deal with it? You were saying that it's an incredibly deep-rooted thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know it's the work of God, that he has to be involved in this to help people get free. But can you just help us with this and what it looks like as you work with somebody who has addiction?
So I think the most important first for me, it's always to remember that I believe that human beings are made in God's image. I believe that we're very precious to God. And I believe that God's made us for relationship. So I think a vital human need is to belong, and a human need is to be accepted where we are right now, not who we're meant to be or want to be, but where we are right now. And that's why you see so many people end up in addiction or in gangs, because they're desperate to belong. So first of all, I think it's creating a place or a relationship where people feel that you accept them. My big saying, which I say to everybody, accept warts and all, that you just accept people and love them unconditionally. And you do need God's wisdom. I'm a big believer. I do believe God speaks, and it's trying to tune our ear to what He's saying. We've got the Word of God, but sometimes it's also trying to hear what do you want to say or do, in this situation or this person. And I think first of all, it's just listening, loving them. When it's building up a relationship. When you've got a relationship with that person and they know that you genuinely care about them and love them, then you can start to bring in the challenge. Again, it's being led by this Holy Spirit, because sometimes we want to really challenge, but actually there is a timing for that. And I think, and it has to come out of relationship. So it's bringing in that challenge. And I think if you've got people that around you that you can see are addicted, alcohol, a biggie. A lot of people, might have a family member or somebody that you can see is drinking too much, but they can't see that there's a problem. Now, there's not anything you can do until that person gets to that place of really acknowledging there's a problem. But what you can do gently is keep challenging and saying, I'm really concerned about the amount that you're drinking. I think loving them sometimes is not pretending that it's not happening, but saying, I'm really concerned. There are agencies that you can talk to. The Al-Anon is for families and friends of people caught in addiction. And I'm very happy for my email address to be given out. So if anybody who's listening needs any help or advice, you're ever so welcome to email me, because I can put you in touch with the right people as well, or I can listen and sort of take it from there.
Okay, we'll put
I
that
answered
in
the question.
the
I've forgotten.
No, you're great. So, first stage is got to be. Oh, don't worry.
Dog.
We have a history. We have a history of dogs.
I'm just going to shut the door.
Ah, lovely. Thank you, Dettie, very much indeed. Just bring the camera down a little bit while we're at it, because your face is disappearing off screen. That's great. So you're saying they've got to be willing to change.
Yeah.
Okay, so supposing they've kind of reached rock bottom, they do want to change. What next?
So there's different organisations there to help. There is Turning Point. Yeah, it's always worth giving Turning Point a ring. It, depending on what area you're in, depends how help there is. It's seeing what's available in your local town as well. There's, I mean, again, I've got two workers who have come from, who are my outreach workers, who are both from a background of addiction, and they're absolutely brilliant, and they would help anybody. So, you know, I think it's yeah, Turning Point is finding out, trying to find out who's around in the local area. What I'm talking about my work is that if it's somebody in the Leicestershire area, they're very welcome to contact me, and we can link you in with the right kind of people around Leicestershire, because we know a lot of people around. If it's outside of Leicestershire, you're still welcome to contact me, because we work with a lot of other charities around the country as well. And it's very difficult to know from area to area what are the best organisations, because there's some that are brilliant and some that aren't, and it can be really difficult when your loved ones finally made that decision, I need help, and they can't find where to get that help, or where they ring just isn't very helpful. But there is help out there. There's a lot, if they come to the place where they feel they need to go to away for rehabilitation, then there are a lot of rehabs that are free. So, because most people will think that you have to pay thousands of pounds, but there are a lot of really good rehabs around the country that are free. And again,
those rehabs are you go and live there and receive some help.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, look, we'll make sure we put that your email address in, and if you do want some help and you live in the Leicester in particular, then get in touch with Dettie, and maybe she can put you in touch with the right people. Dettie, I don't know whether you can do this. Could you maybe just earth some of this in the story of somebody? So, for example, I missed this because I wasn't there on the Sunday, but Tim interviewed Claire, who you've worked with, and that was an amazing interview, and people have told me about it since. Can you maybe perhaps tell her story, or somebody else, just to illustrate some of this?
Yes, Claire actually lives with me, which is lovely.
There you go.
So yeah, she's very open. So Claire came to us. In fact, I had a phone call on a Friday about 4 o'clock. Always comes at Friday on 4 o'clock when you're desperate to go home, from a probation officer who's actually a Christian, ringing. And we often get calls from probation or the council with people that they just don't know how to help. They say, please, can you help? Because we do put people in bed and breakfast, or we have taken people home sometimes. Anyway, so the probation officer rang and said, please, can you help? I've got this girl, I just don't know what to do. So Claire had been a heroin addict for quite a few years. She'd had a very quite a wealthy family actually, but her mum had left when she was little. There was lots of rejection, etc., etc., and she'd ended up in a heroin addiction, which had really affected her mental health. So she had her daughter, who was 7, I think, at the time, and they'd been staying in this hotel because they were homeless. And Claire was convinced that people were trying to kill her. So it ended up with her daughter being taken off her, and she was sectioned. So it was a Friday night, and the hospital had discharged her, and she had absolutely nowhere to go. And the council was saying that they didn't have a duty of care for her. So the probation officer just rang and said, I just don't know what to do. So we paid for her to go into bed and breakfast. And then I just said to her, I was aware that she'd just come out of hospital. So I said, look, I'm going to church on Sunday. If she wants to come, she's really welcome. So I picked her up and she came and she got saved. Anyway, to cut a long story short, she came and lived with us at Exaireo, and she was quite a madam. Got up to lots of tricks, including carried on drugs. So in the end, we gave her an ultimatum and said that she either went to rehab or we would evict her. So she chose to go away to rehab, and she turned her life radically around. She got restored with her daughter, and she did a year and came back to us. She did a year working with us voluntary, and now she's one of our outreach workers, and she's absolutely brilliant. And she's been clean, I think it's 5 years coming up for.
Isn't that great?
So that's lovely. So we have lots of people that come, you know, from the streets. We had another guy who was street homeless, who was an alcoholic. He had a son who was 4, lost contact with him completely. And he came into the project and just radically turned his life around. He met with Jesus and he ended up getting clean. He's been clean for over 11 years now. And he became one of our senior support worker, and he went on to get a degree in drug and alcohol counselling. And he's actually just had a book published who Russell Brand has done the forward bit for it.
So look, I mean, a lot of people listening to this might think, oh, you know, Christians, you just kind of, you know, pray over these people and you're nicey and so on. And you do pray, and you are nice, but you're quite tough. I mean, that was pretty tough, saying to Claire, look, you know, shape up or ship out, basically.
Yeah. I think definitely learned it wasn't easy, that loving somebody is tough sometimes. There is a time when I do believe, no matter, you know, the stories I hear, people have come from horrendous backgrounds a lot of the time. And you know, we had one guy whose father and uncle tortured him, beat him up really badly, and then buried him alive. It was actually on the front news of the paper a few years ago. You know, I mean, absolutely horrendous. It was only found because a dog walker happened to walk by and heard this whimpering, and that's where he was found. And that was his own father that did that. So, you know, people, you hear some horrendous stories, but I think there's grace for that. But there's also, I do believe there are consequences, and people do have to take responsibilities for their behaviours. And it's hard. It doesn't mean that you don't understand, but I've learned that actually, pat on the head, empathise, sometimes there does need to be that challenge. So look, I understand why you did that, but actually that's not okay. And actually there's got to be change. And for the lad I told you about, who's now at Bible college, we evicted him 4 times.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he came, but you know, we're big believers, you know, there has to be a consequence to behaviour. So they get chance after chance, but there comes a time it's actually, we're not going to put up with that anymore, you need to go. And then they know that we love them. So a few months later, they come again and say, can we come back? So they come back again. And then they'll mess up again. So they say, sorry, you're going to have to go. We can't, you know. But, you know, we've had people 3 or 4 times before they've actually then come through. So I do believe that they're loving people is saying, we love you, but that behaviour is not acceptable. So if you're not going to change or deal with it, then you're going to have to go. And it's letting them fall again and fall to hit that rock bottom until they've got to get to that place where they're going to say, I've had enough and I'm going to change, I want to do this. And then when they're at that place, then we want to be there to help them and walk it through with them.
Thank you. If you want to ask Dettie a question, do ask one. Our time's getting near the end, but I wanted to just ask you about the future, really, and what plans have you got for the future? Where is the Exaireo Trust going to go? What's on Dettie's heart?
So one of the things I haven't mentioned is we became a registered social landlord. Again, the vision God gave me years ago was that the project would go throughout the land and then overseas. So we became a registered social landlord so that we were able to help other churches and charities around the country set up similar projects to us. It's their charity, but it can come under our umbrella. There's a whole lots of reasons for that. But the thing that I've always been on my heart, even before working with the homeless, was women caught up in prostitution and families. And so we've been trying for quite a few years to set up a women's rehab. We very much want a farm where we can take women with their children, so that for women caught up in addiction, so they don't have to have the children taken off them, that we can provide a safe place for them and the children where they can come and sort out, all the stuff, all the reasons why they're addicted, to see them get free, really. So that is very much on my heart, and we're pushing lots of doors at the moment. We found a beautiful farm, which was 1.5 million. So we're trusting God, if it's the right one, then He'll provide. So we're just working out all the day-to-day running of that, how much that will cost, and yeah. So that for me is the next thing.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. And just finally, supposing I'm watching this and I'm a bit like the 20-something Dettie, I feel very weak and very small, but there's just this kind of thing I can't get off my heart, that it feels like God's just pressing down. What would you say to that person?
I would just say, just step out. I think you have to take, it's a bit like walking. I don't know if you're mountain walkers, when you walk a mountain, you get, I look at the top of it, I looked at snow and think, I'm never going to do it. It's taking that step at a time and just being obedient to what, but not trying to work out any. I never dreamt that doing the suit run would lead to all of this, and it was a major thing for me to step out and do the suit run. I was incredibly shy, etc. So I think it's don't lean on your own understanding. The word's true. God uses the foolish things. I wish you could. Sometimes when people see me now, I think I wish you knew me then, because if you did, you'd know that if I can do this, I'm not being humble. If I can do this, you can, because it's not us, it's God. So I'd just say to just take the small step, just be obedient to what God's saying in the small, and just, He's so faithful, and the word is true. He doesn't, you don't wait till you're perfect, because you won't ever be. Don't wait till you know it all, because it's best not to. My best times are when I say to God, I really don't know what to do or say here. So I think it's just take small steps and keep looking at God, and have good people around you to pray for you and encourage you.
Dettie, thank you. How are you guys managing at the moment with everything that's going on, the virus and so on? How does the work at Exaireo Trust continue?
Again, we're doing most of it by phone. We're all working. We're working from home, but we have a rota of who can pop into the office each day, though we keep it locked. Some of the key workers, but it's their choice, do meet up with their residents individually, go for a walk, social distancing. So, and we've doing a lot on Zoom. So we're setting up fun activities with the residents on Zoom, and just trying to just keep touching in with them. And actually, we're seeing more and more people, residents, wanting to know more about Jesus and reading the Bible, and So we just feel very blessed, and I feel God's really protecting us as well.
Dettie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We've been it's just been such a great conversation. I've been really encouraged, so thank you for challenging us, inspiring us, being very real with us and honest. Thank you for that. If you want to know more about the Exaireo Trust, and like me, you struggle to spell it, then you can find it in the comments section here, and you'll easily get a lead to it. And if you'd like to support the work in any way, I've put a link to the page where you can do that, and you can find out more, I'm sure, and get in touch. And I will put, with Dettie's permission, her email address in there, and you can get in touch with her. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Thank
God
you.
bless you all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.